You don't have any Stephen King?
You've got the shinin'.
You mean shiny.
Shh! Wanna get sued?
It's just your fate. You're that geeky Stephen King kid. There's one of you in every school.
Okay, that's him, that's Cujo,
I was thinking along the lines of no TV and no beer make Homer something.
Oh, crazy.
Don't mind if I do!
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King, hosted by two lifelong constant readers. We do non-spoiler and spoiler reviews of King's published work, and take a critical look at his film and television adaptations as well. We also discuss the latest King news and check in with each other on our ongoing King obsessions. It's the podcast where all things serve the King. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com. You can also like the Facebook page at facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod and follow us on Twitter and every other level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. And if you'd like to support what we do here, you can become a patron at patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer for a ridiculous amount of bonus audio content spread across all of ObsessiveViewer.com's various podcasts. I've said this in numerous episodes in the past, but I am 17 weeks in to a weekly Sunday excursion through the work of Stephen King as it pertains to Holly Gibney in anticipation of his new novel Holly, which comes out next week on Patreon. I've been doing weekly installments covering Mr. Mercedes, Finders Keepers, End of Watch, The Outsider, and If It Bleeds. And now that Holly is almost upon us, I'll be doing the same thing with that. It's 100 or so page installments of read-along reviews that I talk about it in part. So check that out, patreon.com/ObsessiveViewer. Tons of stuff there. So I am one of your hosts, Matt Hurt, and today we have a very special episode of the show. So as I said, next week, not only is King's latest novel, Holly, releasing, we are also seeing the release of a new documentary all about Stephen King's film and television adaptations, King on Screen. This documentary is a blast and such a nice love letter to Stephen King fans and just people who love that kind of the relationship between artist and adapter of art. It is a very engrossing and well done documentary. It is going to be releasing on VOD and Blu-ray next week on September 8th. And I had the extreme pleasure tonight to welcome to the show and interview King On Screen producer Sebastien B. Cruz to talk all things King on Screen. We just finished recording, and I had a blast chatting with him about what went into making the documentary, the entire production side of it, how the interviews came about, what they were looking for in the interviews, and what they did with all of the material. It is a fantastic conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm going to play it here in a moment. But I just want to say thank you to Sebastien for being so gracious with his time and allowing me to chat with him about the documentary and about Stephen King and about, independent film as well. It is a very great conversation. I have links in the show notes of this episode to all of their work, all of his work, and where you can find King on Screen and his production company as well. So check the show notes and everything. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to my interview with Sebastien Cruz, producer on King on Screen. So here we go. Enjoy the show.
Everybody who hasn't read a Stephen King book has still seen a Stephen King movie.
It all started with Carrie.
Seeing her burn everything down at the end, you're watching it, and it's thrilling.
Creepshow had a massive impact.
It completely traumatized me.
Aren't you going to say hello?
Pet Sematary is a great movie.
Misery is one of my favorites.
Stephen King writes human beings, and then he puts them in phantasmagorical situations.
All right. Hi, guys. I am here tonight with a special episode of the podcast. Here coming soon, we have not only King's latest novel, Holly, releasing next week, but we also have a new documentary all about Stephen King's film and television adaptations. King on Screen will be released on VOD and Blu-ray on September 8th. And I have the extreme pleasure to welcome to the show King on Screen producer Sebastien B. Cruz to talk all things King on Screen. So welcome to the show, Sebastien, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us here on Tower Junkies. And congratulations on the film. I've been really looking forward to this, and I got a chance to see it a couple of nights ago, and it's fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm happy to hear you like the film.
Yeah, of course. As a just diehard Stephen King fan, it's like I'm gonna get ahead of myself a little bit, but there is something that I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. But the way that you guys begin the documentary, that framing device, was like such a palpable love letter to the Stephen King fandom. Like the amount of Easter eggs and references and all of these little tiny things that just jump out to people who are aware of Stephen King is just a delight. So I was not prepared for that, and I just thought that was lovely. So yeah, just
this is cool.
Yeah.
In fact, there are more than 300 references in this short sequence. So it's a really great, condense of everything. But also we wanted to have something that is for the fans, because all of those references, but also kind of an introduction to Stephen King filmic universe, by also using references in the framing of the shots and in the environments and everything. We shot in Maine, by the way.
Nice.
So everything participates to that. And also it was some kind of a metaphor, of the director entering Stephen King universe. So it had different element to it, it wasn't just make a fictional sequence for no reason. It was a bit more intellectual than that and conceptual than that. Mm-hmm. And it stays, for me, a documentary approach, because we use so much content from other films, and even the actors who appear in the sequence all are from the Stephen King universe. Like we have Miko Yu, who were Gage in Pet Sematary. We have Amy Irving from Carrie, and Alexandra Paul from Christine. So it was also this concept that we wanted to push very, very far.
Nice. Well, it blew me away, and just like over 300 references to Stephen King in there is an achievement unto itself. One that just jumped out to me, because I had just recently read for the first time If It Bleeds, was the banner that said Chuck Krantz, 39 great years. Thanks, Chuck. Like that novella, like, just burrowed itself into my soul when I read it, and then to see that banner on on the film. And obviously I know that Mike Flanagan is attached to adapt it, and like knowing that he was a talking head in the documentary, of course, it just filled me with so much joy. So I just wanted to point that out, and just how much I kind of geeked out over that. But yeah,
I guess there is also this. What we wanted also to do was to make people buy the Blu-ray and just play and pause every shot, and just try to dissect everything, like it was also a bit of the fan geeky kind of way of thinking that, but anyway, Daphne, the director, she tried to find a reference in each book or novel or any work Stephen King has published, you know. It's also trying to excite geeks and nerds, and, you know, just people who just play and pause every shot.
Yep.
And in the Blu-ray, by the way, there will be I don't know in which version, but there will be also a comment of me like playing and pause the introduction. I don't tell every Easter egg, but I just play and pause and talk about how it happened. Also, you know, about the shooting and everything. So this is something I recorded recently.
Nice.
Yeah. So
that's
it's
awesome.
like 25 minutes to talk about the 7 minutes introduction, you know. So with stories, behind the scenes stories and everything.
That has me incredibly excited. That's freaking awesome. It kind of reminded me a bit of Castle Rock, the Hulu show. It just kind of had that kind of vibe to it, where it's just throwing all of these references. And we at Tower Junkies adored Castle Rock, obviously, and like it was so great because like throughout it, I'm sitting there like, this is like season 3 of Castle Rock. This is like the season 3 we never got is in this intro to this documentary. It's incredible.
Yeah, maybe in some way.
Yeah, but to kind of like get back into it and everything. Can you tell me just kind of how the project came about and basically what the genesis of it was and everything? For those listening, obviously, King on Screen is a documentary about the film and television adaptations of Stephen King. And I think that's something that is important to highlight because there are a lot of people who aren't King readers per se, but there are people that know Stephen King as a brand, as who he is and his cultural footprint and everything. And for a lot of people that are Stephen King readers, their introduction was seeing like the It miniseries in the 90s when he had friends staying the night and then terrified of the spider and still terrified of spiders to this day and hosting a podcast as well. But how did the project come about and what was kind of the genesis of it and everything?
Yeah, you know, it's been a while since Daphne, the director, which whom I work. Like it's been 10 years we worked together in different documentaries and fictional short films mainly. And she told me, I really want to do a documentary about Stephen King. And I was like, yeah, okay, but you need to find the right angle, you know, because like there are documentaries about Stephen King. What do you want to say? And also she and I, when we do a portrait or something about subject, and especially in cinema, you know, we try to not focus too much on the personal lives of the personalities, you know, because we want to look at them for what they bring to the world, you know. So that was also my point, like, what do you want to tell with this film, you know? And one day she came to me and she said, okay, I know what I want to do with the Stephen King documentary. I want to interview the directors who adapted Stephen King stories, because like you said, most of the fans, they discovered Stephen King by the movies, and Stephen King is nothing without the movies. Like without the big success of Carrie, maybe there wouldn't be a Stephen King today. So without the successes of the films, Stephen King couldn't have been as prolific, you know. So of course he is a very talented author, and what we were wondering is why it is that he is the one who fascinates the most Hollywood, because he is the most adapted living author in the world. So this is like in the world, at least in the Occidental world that we know, you know. I don't know about Indians and everything. Like they have a very rich cinema as well, but you know, I mean, from the cinema we are used to, he is the most adapted. And why? And it was the thing, you know, why is he the most adapted author? And we sent a few emails, first, because of course this concept would work only if directors would accept to participate,
Yeah.
And we wrote like 10 emails, and like a few days later we had 10 yes almost, So a couple of days later we were like, okay, it's on. we will be doing that. And that was in December of 2019.
Oh, wow.
So by February of 2019, we had planned a trip to the US, and we had meetings with Frank Darabont, Taylor Hackford, and others, And we bought the tickets on the 18th of February, 2020. The night just after we bought our tickets, Trump closed the borders. And at first we were like, yeah, we're leaving in a month, it's fine. But yeah, like everybody else, we thought it would be just a matter of a couple of weeks, and it wasn't. So it was all delayed, and we had to wait more than a year to be able to come and shoot the interviews. And so that's why also the project took that much time, but also it allowed to, dig a little bit deeper certain things and certain concepts, and especially this intro, that we wanted to do, but didn't know at the time exactly what we will be doing. And yeah, so it allowed us to gather some fundings and to try to do our best with this movie.
That is excellent. Like, I want to just highlight how, like, you can definitely see the amount of work that went into it, both in that intro and in the interviews and everything. Like, to know that there was such a massive setback with COVID and everything, and then you guys still like went back to it when you were able to, and then were able to do it is really impressive, because it really shows, especially when there are little bits and pieces that are really they dive into the deeper level of what it is to create and adapt a Stephen King property, and just the idea of adaptation as well. But it kind of also all goes back to, like you were talking about, that first adaptation, Carrie, and how that was such a big thing for King, because it just became this big thing, and then that allowed him to become a household name. It's just it's really really impressive, really incredible. And the amount of people that you guys interviewed is kind of astounding. There are interviews with Mike Flanagan, Frank Darabont, Mick Garris, and so many people. Josh Boone. I could name so many, but it's great how each person kind of has their own. They're coming at it from their own specific kind of experience with the work and everything. Like, I've long said that Mike Flanagan has this incredible eye for King's material, as someone who like reads the material and knows it and has grown up with it. And so to hear him talk about how he read it when he was a kid, and that just started a love affair with Stephen King's work and everything, I was just like, yeah, I know. Like, it's so great. Yeah.
I mean, having all those people is very interesting because of several things, but one of the main thing is they are from different generations. So if you take Tom Holland or Mike Flanagan, you have two generations of filmmakers between them,
Yep.
And in the middle you will find like Fraser Heston and Frank Darabont, and like Mick Garris is somewhere around as well, maybe in between the two, in between Holland and Darabont, and you discover that King does not just fascinate a generation of people. He's some kind of timeless, and that's something we try to also assess in the film. Why is he so timeless? What does this work do to us, as readers or audience or filmmakers, to be so true, whatever the period you are in, and that's something that really much interested us, because like having those different people from different generation and different backgrounds who wanted to adapt him, that was pretty cool, and and you don't have the same perspective when you are Tom Holland, who discovered Carrie as an adult in cinema or Shining or whatever, than you are when you grew up with the It miniseries, as you said earlier. That's not the same profile, and the people who read Stephen King, like some filmmakers are big readers, some others are not as big readers, but the big readers, they are also like, they have a relationship to King, like you said, like Mike Flanagan. You can tell, and Josh Boone, you can tell they read the books.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't like withdraw anything to the others. It's just like all those different perspectives on one subject, with all the topics that we try to bring together in this documentary, is very interesting, because like each people will see different things from different angles, and just we had 27 directors in total in the film. So and most of them we interviewed for at least 1 hour. So we have something between 30 and 40 hours of interviews.
Wow.
So what do you do with that?
Right.
That was the great question.
Yeah.
So in the end, like thinking what the right path for the story in the documentary. How do you organize things? We couldn't just do a list of films, We couldn't just do 76 Carrie, 79 Salem Slot, 80 Shining, etc., etc. It wouldn't have been possible. It would have been. It would have taken like so long. And it wouldn't have. It could be possible. I mean, but we wouldn't do it with directors, because directors, you want some nuggets, you want some things that are not just, okay, Carrie is this and it's that, and I have just an analysis of how it come inside the history of cinema and everything. Like, you want something more emotional from the directors, They put their guts on the table to do those movies, and at one point, at least, like, it is difficult to do a movie, whatever the easiness of the production would be, you would feel like Mike Flanagan, you just go to Netflix and sell a movie, but I'm pretty sure it's not that simple, and for everybody, like at one point it become a baby, your baby, and you have to defend it with your nail and teeth,
Yep.
And that's something we wanted to have from them, just not just an analysis of what is the Stephen King genre. He has almost his own genre, right?
Oh, absolutely.
What is the Stephen King genre in the story of cinema, and how it was? So we tried to assess like how the different formats also had different impact, like a miniseries or a series compared to a movie. It's very different,
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to address, but at the same time, we didn't want something too intellectual, because it was also supposed to be something that is accessible to everybody, So, because if you don't know Stephen King, the reality is you may know him, You may know what one of the films he wrote, or he wrote the story. And most people didn't know, like, The Green Mile was Stephen King. The Shawshank Redemption was Stephen King. That Stand By Me was Stephen King. Like, all of those, like, people, they know those movies. Like, if you interest yourself a tiny bit in in cinema, you know those movies. And The Shining, same. You know, I discovered The Shining. I didn't knew who Stephen King were. I didn't care at the time, you know.
Oh, yeah.
When I was a teenager, I just watched The Shining by Kubrick. Didn't care who the author was. It's different from Daphne, because when she discovered Shining, it was from the book, and she read the book when she was a teenager, and then she saw the movie. You know, everybody has his own approach to the Stephen King material, you know. But I didn't know that Shawshank or Green Mile were Stephen King books before they became those cult movies, you know. And most people don't either. And I think, you know, when you are a Stephen King fan, you know, you would just think, okay, but that we know, like, you know, King didn't like the Shining, big deal. We know that for a long time. Like, you do maybe, but you're not alone on this earth, you know.
Right.
And also because we wanted to have this we wanted to do. It was very difficult for that reason as well. Like, how do you please everybody? You can't.
Yeah.
But how do you find the right balance between having a film accessible to people who are cinephiles, maybe, you know, or at least have an interest in cinema, and the people who are hardcore fans of Stephen King? How do you please the both of them, both of the worlds? You know, I still am figuring that out, you know.
I would say that you guys were very successful with that, specifically because of those nuggets of information about, like, I was floored basically anytime Darabont spoke in the documentary, because in a way, his work was kind of a tangential entryway for me to get into Stephen King, because I saw, like, Shawshank when I was a kid, and The Green Mile and when I was a little bit older, but I knew Stephen King as a horror writer, and to kind of see the way that all the filmmakers kind of talk about the differences and like there's this great anecdote that King said in, like, I think an author's note in one of his books, where where he was on a plane and this woman approached him and said, like, hey, I don't think you, I didn't like Misery all that much because it was too dark and everything. You should write stories more like that Shawshank Redemption. Like, it's really like nice, or maybe Stand By Me or something, but just really fun, like, anecdotes like that. But
totally.
Like that.
I know this
difference.
one. And Frank Darabont told us told this anecdote to us.
Nice.
It was very fun. It was very fun.
Nice. Let me ask you this. What's your kind of relationship with Stephen King stuff? You said that you were kind of introduced to his work through the Shining film. And, like, are you a reader, or have you seen his other stuff? Like, where do you land on the Stephen King kind of carousel?
So I'm not a hardcore fan by any means. I mean, like, of course, with the past years, I developed an expertise on the subject, some kind of expertise at least, and love, of course, for the material. But I'm not a big reader. I've been a bit when I was a teenager, but never read Stephen King books before I was adult. And my first encounter, in fact, with Stephen King was the miniseries It.
Nice.
But I didn't know, again, who Stephen King was. I knew who Pennywise was, and he was in lots of my nightmares, that's for sure. But Stephen King didn't care, you know. And after that, of course, when I was a teenager, I saw Shining, but again, I didn't know who was the author behind that, and didn't care at all at that time. And, you know, maybe like everybody else, I've seen like The Green Mile and the Shawshank Redemption, like somewhere in my teenage years. And before that, I didn't really know who Stephen King was. Nice. And like I said, I've been working with Daphne for 10 years, more than 10 years. And she is the one who really introduced me to Stephen King. And it was way longer before she decided to do this documentary, you know. And she talked about me, about him, and saying, like, we were talking about authors we both liked. And Stephen King came along, and we were like, okay, who's Stephen King? What does he write, etc. And okay, I heard a little bit about Stephen King at the end of my teenage years because of Kingdom Hospital. Because my friend who introduced me it said to me, "Oh, I'm watching Kingdom Hospital now, and it's been written by Stephen King, you know, the man who did it." Okay, I don't want to see that, you know. At that time, I wasn't so much in horror movies as well because I was so frightened by the souvenir, you know.
Oh yeah.
Of those years, you know. And I respond a lot to that when Mike Flanagan said he was very terrified by the horror movies, you know, in the documentary. Yeah. So I had that also kind of feeling. I'm better now. I'm
nice. That's good to hear.
So at that moment we discussed about all those movies and everything, you know, and the books and what's the truth in the Stephen King work. And I start reading novels and mostly novellas, you know, short stories, because as I said, I'm not the guy who will eat 600 pages in 3 days. I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
Like maybe I will be one day, but I'm not yet there.
Yeah, I will say I rely almost solely on audiobooks because I can't, like, with a massive book, I can't just like flip through like 1,000 pages. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I mean, like, I work a lot, and when I read is when I go to bed generally, and I will just read one chapter, and the next morning I don't remember exactly what I read. You know, so I'm much more of a short books guy, and if I don't read for 1 or 2 nights, it's over. You know?
Yeah.
So. You know, but I'm not a very good reader in that sense. I love to read. I read a lot of other stuff and also a lot of nonfiction. But yeah, I don't know, you know. But I enjoy very much like the short stories and everything, and also, you know, from the discussions we had with Daphne, and then with the directors and with other fans, we built a community. I like I said, I developed this kind of expertise of the Stephen King work, and I know the difference between some of the books and the films and everything, you know. So yeah, but again, this is very interesting how we each have our own approach to Stephen King work. You know, some people never open a book and they still Stephen King fans because they see the movies. So hardcore fans maybe will say, or constant reader, you know, they will say, no go, you're not a fan, you do not read, you know, whatever.
No shame here, no judgment here. I am of the thought that Stephen King's work, obviously I thinking extraordinarily highly of him as someone who just gives the world all of these stories and everything, but I feel like there is just so much that you can gain from just experiencing Stephen King in any capacity. So I totally get that. And I'll ask you this also. In the process of making the film and getting it all together and everything, is there any specific Stephen King movie or story that you weren't aware of or you didn't have as strong a knowledge of that in the process of making the film, it piqued your interest and have you interested in checking out?
I mean, again, it's been more than 10 years now that I'm interested in Stephen King, like indirectly at least. So I've seen a lot of movies in the meanwhile, before doing the documentary. So I've seen Carrie, and I've seen seen again Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile and The Mist. Those are some, and The Shining. I rewatched as a young adult those movies, and when we decided to do this documentary, I watched, I think, every film we could find. With Daphne, we just rewatched everything, Let me think, because like a lot of them I've been recommended to see before even thinking about doing this documentary, like The Dead Zone as well, like Christine as well, that those movies, like, you cannot pass. But as a cinephile, you cannot also miss them, you have to see The Dead Zone of Christine. Every cinephile has to see that, and it's not really horror movies, like even Christine, which is like a bit like the killer car and then fire and everything. It's not that scary, It is really something else that appealed to me for this film. I really like Christine. I mean, probably the one I didn't know that much before, and that I really, really enjoyed more and more, is Creepshow.
Nice.
Creepshow is amazing, it's just crazy, it's funny, and it's horrific, and it's a crazy funny horror, with a pinch of absurds, and yeah, I really like this one. But I love Christine. I think like it's still nowadays one of the best of them all. And yeah, I think like The Dark Half also I really enjoyed. Nice. Romero as well. Like this one is not as much known, but I think it's very good. Like, I love The Langoliers as well. And in those two, like the VFX, it's not the best, right?
No,
but the rest is amazing.
Yeah. The Langoliers holds such a special place in my heart too, because like that the novella itself is like the concept of it is like clearly inspired by a Twilight Zone episode from the original Twilight Zone series. The Twilight Zone, I also have a podcast all about the Twilight Zone. So like when I was reading the Langoliers for the first time like a few years ago, I was like, this is just like the Odyssey of Flight 33 from the Twilight Zone. And then he references it in the novellas, like one of the characters says, this is like the Odyssey of Flight 33. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. And then like watching the TV movie for the Langoliers, yes, it is super cheesy, but it's like, it is just so of a time. And like the fact that, minor spoiler alert, it ends on like a freeze frame jump in the air of the whole group. I'm just like, I am loving this so much. So yeah. I love the Langoliers.
Yeah, I like this one, and Sinner also from Tom Holland as well. Like I love it. But there are so much. Oh, yeah. One of my favorite as well is The Mist. Like The Mist is incredible because again, the effects not the best of the cinema. That's for sure. But I like also the style of the plasticky kind of tentacles and everything. This is not right. You feel this is not real, but it works in the movie. You don't care. It doesn't. It didn't that does the trick. And again, what's so great in The Mist? It's not the monsters. It's the humans.
Yep.
Trapped in that shopping center. And having like this microcosm of a society in such a small place, and everybody is trapped and see people like lose their minds.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. Like the rest, okay, fair enough. We don't care about the VFX when the story is that good,
Absolutely. That Yeah, The Mist is obviously everyone talks about just the ending. You like in the film, you guys like Darabont talks about it, and you guys like talk about it in the film as well. Just how the ending is so memorable, and it's something that is different from what King wrote, and like it's so incredible. Like it is such a great example of a filmmaker taking material and like clearly being like, obviously Darabont and King are like they're pretty tight knit, they're close and everything, and just like understanding the text and then executing it in such an amazing way is just, it is incredible. And like you were saying earlier, movies, it's hard to get them made and everything. Like even I'm still heartbroken that Flanagan isn't able to make Revival, which like that was a whole big thing that he was going to do, but it just didn't come together. But like it's like said, like, yeah, every movie is a miracle on some level, and like I just love and even the documentary itself with COVID and everything, like it's miraculous that you guys were able to finish the project and everything. It's amazing. But yeah, just to see so many and hear so many voices from, like you said, different eras of King's career on screen is just, it's incredible.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, we talked about that. Like you said that earlier, like Frank Darabont is so interesting. Mm-hmm. So it was hard to cut his stories, of course. Mm-hmm. That's why we talk so much of The Green Mile, for example, like mm-hmm. so many good stories. And we had the chance to speak with Greg Nicotero as well. Yeah. Greg Nicotero is the director. He directed the Creep Show, the new Creep Show TV series. But he also were a makeup artist on Misery, Shawshank, and The Green Mile.
And I had no idea. That kind of blew my mind when that was referenced. Yeah, I was just like, wow.
And he was on the set of Creep Show, the first Creep Show, and he was like a big close relationship with George Romero, and he has been on all those movies. So of course, when we talk about The Green Mile and we have Greg Nicotero, we're like, okay, there's that. You know, you need that, you know. Yeah. And same for Misery. Like, can you give some insights, anecdotes, and we have these great edits and montage about him talking about when Annie Wilkes broke the feet of James Caan, and this is Paul Sheldon. You know, this is so good, you know, and having those stories, those little nuggets, like I said earlier, is very interesting, and very cool, you know, and very human. We had a really human feeling with all those directors. It was so great, you know, because they were all very, very nice with us. For one example of that is in the introduction when you arrive at the Creep Shop. Mm-hmm. So this is the small store. In the window, there is a puppet. There is a puppet which is the same as the Creep Shop doll. But in fact, it's not only the same. It's not a replica. This is the Creep Show doll that Greg Nicotero sent to us in Maine for us to be able to use it in the film. And he offered that. We didn't ask. He said, hey, because we explained what we wanted to do with the introduction. And he said, hey, you know what? Do you want the Creep Show doll? Because it was behind him during the interview. Yep. During the whole interview, there is the Creep Show doll behind him. And you want it for the introduction? We said, yeah, of course.
That's incredible. I love that so much. He seems like he seems really great, and I loved his stuff. And have you happened to watch any of his Creep Show on Shudder? There's some really great segments that they've done, and they just announced that I think the next season is coming out this October, and I'm just like, I can't wait. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they used different techniques. There is an episode with all animation and everything, and I love animation, and it's so perfect for Creepshow, And they tried a lot of new things. So yeah, I guess I guess it's worth a try for people who like the Creepshow and Creepshow 2,
Oh yeah.
That Romero did.
Yeah, and those movies were also they were so I'd only seen them somewhat recently when we were covering them for the podcast, and I did not I didn't have the knowledge that this is really steeped in that EC Comics, that aesthetic, and having the kind of cartoon interstitials or the comic book aesthetic is just it's so perfect. I love it.
Yeah, and again, it is a bit cheesy as well.
Yeah.
It's not to be taken at first degree.
Right.
You have to step back a bit and to laugh about itself. There is derision in that work.
Absolutely.
But that's what's very cool with it. And I watch again Goosebumps, the TV series.
Yep.
It's for children, right?
Mm-hmm.
For teenagers, at least, or even teenagers, right? Nowadays, they wouldn't even care for that. Probably, maybe for children, But it's so bad, it's good,
Oh yeah.
And the stories are good. Stein have good stories, of course. But everything, the acting, everything is a bit not good, but it's good because it is, and just because what it brings, this 1880s vibe, something like that. It's maybe even more old than that. I don't even know, but it's there is this vibe, and that's something I'm looking forward in the films, in general. I like this feeling when I'm watching. I mean, I can watch a very modern film with great VFX or a lot of action and everything and enjoy it as much as I can watch a black and white movie with no dialogues because it's mute and enjoy it as well. And what's in between, I can also enjoy it, And just, I take a step back and I say, okay, this is not something we would release now because it would be very weird.
Right.
But what could be the news that, this could be interesting, What could we do if we took that format, for example? I was wondering that, could we do some kind of a TV miniseries of small stories like that for teenagers that would work very well without being true horror, pure horror, really child stories. I'm wondering. I think that could be great.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting too that you brought up Goosebumps, because that for me and for a lot of Stephen King fans and everything, I feel of that specific generation, I kind of feel like R.L. Stine was the first step towards Stephen King fandom. It just opened the doors for us. Yeah.
Maybe,
yeah.
I read Goosebumps when I was a kid, Nice. I didn't read Stephen King, but, I didn't know who R.L. Stine was either, I read a few of his books, and I knew it was Chair de Poule in France, Goosebumps, Goosebumps. The translation was called Chair de Poule, and we just read this series of books, of books. But, when you're a kid, you don't really pay that much attention to the name of the author. Not everybody does, actually. Some do, probably, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I was just focused on the stories,
Oh, absolutely.
And was frightened as well.
Yeah.
reading those stories.
Yeah. And those stories are what just stick with you. You can have all of the all of the trivia and everything about who writes it and who makes it and everything, but it's really the stories that just stick with you. So, yeah. So I know that we're kind of getting close to our time a little bit, but I did want to. All right, great. I wanted to touch on real quick what the experience was like taking King on screen on the festival circuit? I know it played at Fantastic Fest. How did that experience go, and how was that in terms of like showcasing the baby to the world? Like how did all of that go? What was that experience like?
Yeah, Fantastic Fest was fantastic, and not in the two ways. It was great. It was the first time we show it to a real audience,
Nice.
And it was great because you feel like the audience is very responsive to what we've done, and we had several people coming at the end of the film talking to us and said, "Oh, this anecdote, it reminds me of that, and this anecdote is, and that film that I'm so happy you talked about it and everything, You cannot do this movie and please everybody, like I said,
right.
But most people are happy with it, and
right.
find like the director of the festival or the creator, or I don't remember exactly his position, but he came to us and said, I was on the set of The Green Mile when Michael Clark Duncan was waiting for that call from the Darabont.
Oh, wow.
He had just he read for the role and he was waiting to be called back. And and he said I cried when I saw this anecdote because nice. It was seeing the other side of the mirror, and at the same time like talking about Michael Clark Duncan is really emotional for a lot of people and a lot of fans as well. So of course, and also I must say that the finishing of the film has been a real pain. It's been very, very difficult, going to the finish line and just seeing it on the screen and saying, okay, this is over with quote unquote now. It is great. It is a great feeling. But it was a year ago almost, and in fact it wasn't quite the end because we had a lot of other things to do, and also what I'm very appreciative for is like all the big festivals in the world, like the big genre festivals, wanted the movie. That's so great. That's so great. It's thrilling. It's gratifying and everything. And also being able to have a theater release in the US and Canada was great. Like it's a limited release, right? But it's still very, very cool, and it's more of a miracle when the film, which is already a miracle, is released on the big screens. Because this is rare, and this is valuable for especially for documentary, for all indie films in general, And this is a great chance, and I'm very happy with that as well. And I mean, having the press also very excited by the film. Like we had like articles on big medias, Nice. I just want to remind, like, this is a very small project. I almost did it with Daphne alone. We were like two most of the time, and of course we had people. We managed to bring fundings. We built a community to help us, and this was very motivating. But the real work we had to do by ourselves, most of it. So it's a very lonely trip to do a journey, journey to do a film like that when you don't have a lot of funds and don't, So it's very gratifying to see it now almost everywhere.
Yeah, that in kind of speaking about like independent productions and everything, that is an avenue of filmmaking that I feel like mass audiences, like people who aren't like cinephiles and everything, I don't think that there is a general understanding of just how hard it is to get everything going, to do something independently and be passionate about it. And that's something that I just find so much admiration for people making art independently, and especially when it comes to like documentaries, because I'm of the thought, like I'm of the mind that if I were to be faced with like a documentary production like that, like you said, you guys have like hours and hours and hours and hours of content, I would just be so overwhelmed with like how to cut it, how, like, what's the narrative and everything. And so I just have a ton of respect for documentary filmmakers and being able to put together something that is as special and as loving to just both a specific fandom and just the general appreciating audiences of film is something that's really remarkable. So I don't really have a question with that, just that, hey, that's fantastic.
I can answer anyway. I can answer anyway. Like Daphne did most of the work, and she does on most of the films we collaborate on. She has this capacity of condensing the material and to have a big workhorse power, you know, like she's amazing for that. And she transcripted every interview by herself. Like listened to the interview and she typed, you know. Nice. And after this process, she goes through all the interviews with a highlighter, you know, and she highlights what pops for her, you know. And like that, probably we had at the end of this process something like 5 to 6 hours of content that we knew could be in the documentary. So after that, you have to find two things, like what do you keep and in what order do you put it? And we had this big, was a blackboard, you know. It was a whiteboard actually, but you know, the same. And we just add columns like that and say, okay, what do we start with? And try to make connections with things. And finding our connections was something of the first things to do with this film. Because again, we didn't want to have a really chronological structure because it didn't make that much sense. Right. And we knew that we wanted to dig the topics, the themes that make Stephen King, not just say, oh, okay, Carrie, it was 76, was by Brian and was like Carrie, she is bullied and everything. Like, okay, by Wiki, like open Wikipedia and you will know that, you know. Right. If you want something very, very in depth about each film, like buy a book. Like there are a lot of good books about the Stephen King adaptations that are very, very well done and that go in depth of everything about those films. So we wanted to have something more emotional, like a real connection with the directors, like something we felt when we interviewed them. So having this humanity they have with us and having this like feeling of a discussion, you know, we are discussing like that. And we just talked Goosebumps a few minutes ago. Yeah. You know, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in a structural discussion that we would have, you know. So we wanted to have that. Like we didn't shy about, like sometimes, okay, Josh Boone at one point, he said, when we are talking about Stand By Me, he said, when I think about Stephen King adaptations, I think about Stand By Me and Shawshank Redemption. What bring them together? Nothing. But in the film, it works, you know, because he said that and he said that. He said Stand By Me and Shawshank Redemption in the same sentence. We'll use that, you know, because again, when we have a discussion, it makes me think about that as well, and that's what we wanted to achieve. So it's weird for some people. I know some people don't understand the structure, but I think there is a red path all along the film. Like everything is connected. You cannot just pull a part of the film and have it work the same. It doesn't work that way. So it's all connected. And also, you know, so that was one thing. And the other thing, it was, of course, having those topics that we wanted to discuss, like the family unit. Like this is a big topic in Stephen King universe. and we have also to discuss what film we would use to highlight this, and we chose 1922 and The Shining, but we could have used Carrie as well, and we could have used it as well, and we could have used almost every Stephen King stories, because there are like some parts of those elements in each of his books. If we want to talk about strong female characters, there are like Annie Wilkes and Dolores Claiborne, who are both interpreted by Kathy Bates. And we could have chosen to push forward with Jessie. We talk a little bit about that. But Carrie is also a big, important female character, but we couldn't like connect everything at the same time. We couldn't be exhaustive about that. So we had to accept that, you know, just to let us, remind ourselves, this is a discussion. We cannot cover everything. We speak for 2 hours and we try to provide the best experience possible and try to have this feeling like a warm discussion with the directors who adapted Stephen King. And that's something, in some way, trying to bring back the humanity we felt when we were discussing with those people and try to condense it in less than 2 hours. This is this is a very interesting process, and this is a very it can be hard sometimes, because at one point, like I said, 40 hours of interviews, all these connections to make and say, okay, this is working, this is less working, but we know like this part with Misery when Greg he tell this anecdote is very interesting. And how do we find the balance between anecdotes, because there are a lot, but they are like small nuggets, like I said, and more in-depth analysis of what is like the place of the female characters in Stephen King, and also we had to do with what we had. So of course Christine would have deserved a better chapter in the film. If John Carpenter hear me, you should have participated in this movie, because it would have been great to have you. And same with David Cronenberg, and same with Rob Reiner, and same with Brian De Palma, and same, but for Mary Lambert, who is very lacking in the film. She didn't want to participate.
That's a shame.
So yeah, I think, you also have to work with what you have, and be true to what you want to do. Daphne, she knew that she wanted to have the directors speaking about Stephen King, because it was an interesting point of view on Stephen King. It wasn't to be exhaustive on adaptations. It was also to offer their perspective. And whatever, if it is an analysis, a true analysis, or objective, it's not objective. It's people who adapted Stephen King, who made Stephen King's their own, So all of this is choices.
Yeah. And it comes through. It comes through perfectly. Like, I was gonna ask what, like, one filmmaker were you kind of heartbroken not to have involved in the film? Like, if there was one that you wish that you could have gotten in the room, if you could just pick one, who would it be?
I think, honestly, I would say Andy and Barbara Muschietti. We wanted really bad to have them, and we thought it was very a shame that they couldn't. They said they wanted to participate, but they were on another production and it wasn't possible. Apparently, of course, like the one I just said, like De Palma, Carpenter, Cronenberg, Reiner, and Lambert. Those are 5 giants that are lacking in the film, I guess, or not, but they are not here. Like, if they were in the film would have been very different, and maybe we would have done very different choices, because at that point, when you have like those big adaptations, it would have been very different in terms of rhythm and in terms of constructing the movie, because I don't know what would have happened, and same with Andy Muschietti. We speak a bit about it, but we would have go further in what it means,
Yeah. A lot of those big productions like that are those are full documentaries in and of themselves. So I can totally understand that.
Yeah, you could just do a documentary about it. There is one, and it's only on the miniseries,
Yep.
So, and I'm sure it's 90 minutes, and it's very interesting. From I didn't see it I
haven't seen it yet.
but I heard it is very good, and I'm not surprised, and it is very interesting. And I'm not surprised.
Yep.
And this is one documentary. We didn't want to make a making of, but of course we wanted to have BTS sequences, and we wanted to have BTS anecdotes, and we wanted also to have an analysis, small or more in depth, depends on how people receive it, but about Stephen King work. And I really love when we speak with David Carson. He did one remake of Carrie. It wasn't even a remake; it was the series. He speak about how the others are depicted in Stephen King work, and that I thought was fascinating.
Oh yeah.
It's all about how we treat each other. And this guy has a point. And of course we cannot discuss all the adaptations in the film, and that's a shame. But we couldn't go in depth on David Carson's version of Carrie, because it wouldn't have made sense at that time. People were like, okay, you dig really far Carrie, how will you do that with 80 or 100 adaptations? It's not possible, right?
Yep.
But the thing which is very cool is I love to use documentary in different formats. So what I thought about was we would do the movie as well as we could with its own cinematographic object, and we will use the rest of the content in other formats. So for example, there are cutting room floor in the Blu-ray, so small anecdotes, there are I think something probably an extra half an hour of small anecdotes like this from almost everybody. And also we want to publish a book with the interviews. And who knows, maybe we could find other people to have an interview in the book that are not featured in the movie, because there have been other adaptations in the meanwhile, and so this is something we are planning for next year. We'll see. Hopefully it will be possible soon. But that's something we really want to do, to kind of have this transmedia kind of experience, and not just having all this content and just leave it in a drawer. That would be a shame, I think we should share that, and we should share it also not as a podcast, really, but it could have been possible, but it wouldn't have made that much sense. But try, what's better than a book to speak about Stephen King?
Oh, absolutely. I'm kind of flabbergasted by that. Please do that. I really hope that comes together. Earlier tonight when you were saying that you had all of this footage and everything, and you don't know what to do with it, I was just you have my email address. You can just slide those in there. I will gladly watch every frame that you guys shot for this.
I guess from the beginning I thought about that, because a previous film we've done was a film about the Deauville Film Festival in France, which is an American film festival, and which is focused in part on independent cinema. Like the competition is all independent cinema, American cinema, right? And we did this documentary. It was very, very interesting, and we had the chance to speak with people like Michael Douglas or Claude Lelouch or independent producer like Christine Vachon and a lot of people. Ira Sachs, director, Stéphane Corizet, who is a French director, and it's all French and American people talking about this French festival, which is the window on independent film in the US, in France, you know, and we had like 20 interviews, and at the end of the production, the film was like 75 minutes, something like that, and for 20 hours of interviews, almost, you know, like 18 maybe, and we were like, this is very, very frustrating, you know, not being able to share what we had, because let me say that, like, when you meet with a director and speak with him for an hour, this is like a private masterclass, like really. And I was a bit frustrated with that. And when we decided to go the path we've done with Stephen King, meaning interviewing all those directors, early on in the process I said, okay, we need to do something with the material, because I don't want to take 1 or 2 hours to people and just say, okay, you will be 3 minutes in the film, you know. And yeah, you know, sometimes you have to go that way, but we have so many options today to use this content in different format that we should do it. And especially in documentaries, where there is one cinematographic object, which is the film in itself. And even that film can be split in 2 parts when there is advertisement in the middle, or can be like trimmed because this channel wants only 60 minutes films, and this channel wants 70, and this channel wants 90, you know. You never know, and you don't have the power to stop that. Like, it's not a fiction, especially when it's not a fiction, you know. Like, it's documentaries, and if you want to sell your movie, you have just to be okay. That's fine. Do whatever you want, you know, because you want the film to be seen, to be sold. But there is this cinematographic object, but this is not the only thing your documentary is made of. And as I always say about documentary, the experience is as important as the results, because when we shot the introduction, we went to Maine because it made sense in the documentary approach. It wasn't a production choice for the money, because it was more expensive, more difficult, because there is almost no industry there. So it was really a documentary approach to do that, and also an homage, you know, obviously. But again, trying to use the content and what we do and everything in other medium, it's interesting. And we've done a lot of goodies as well with artists. We tried to have like several approach to the art of Stephen King and what he bring as an imagery in our minds, you know. And so we have stickers, we have bookmarks, we have those things, you know. So yeah, and we had this community, and the community was a big part also of the production, you know. We had this Facebook group with like 2,000 people on it, and we were like trying to keep people up to the news, you know, about the film, and it wasn't always easy, you know, but I can say that those people, our community, they were like the biggest support we ever had in any project, and it's been possible because of them, of course.
That's fantastic to hear. There's no, like, in terms of just fandom, like, Stephen King has been working for decades, and like I kind of feel like there's this just kinship with like Stephen King fans that, you know, even though his career has spanned so many different corners of storytelling, and he's explored so many different things in his art, and people have adapted it in so many different ways and everything. There's always at the core, like, yeah, Stephen King is Stephen King, and we love Stephen King. So that's kind of just the that's kind of a through line throughout all of the fans that I've found. Yeah. Okay, well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do want to just kind of give you a chance to share like where people can find King on Screen online, social media, and where they can find more of your work online as well, on social media.
Yeah, so I'm not that much of a social media user, you know, but you can find, like me, I am on Facebook when I am on the social media.
Mm-hmm.
You can probably find me on Twitter as well, but I'm not a big tweet guy, you know.
Sure.
You can send me a message and maybe I will see it in 2 weeks when I will connect to Twitter, you know. So don't worry. But you can still find me on Facebook, and also like there is this Facebook group I just mentioned, which is like King on Screen, the documentary official group or something like that. I don't know, which may change its name to be more of a style and to allow people to follow our next adventures. We have a few films that will be very exciting soon, and mostly that, like, you know, same. You should be able to find King on Screen on Instagram and Les Films de la Plage, which is my production company, on Instagram, but I'm not a big user, to be honest. Yeah. So Facebook is maybe the best place, like Les Films de la Plage. This is I'm sorry for you English speakers. this is a hard one, but I guess it will be in some of the description you have in your.
Oh, absolutely, and no problem at all.
Maybe the Facebook page of that, and for King on Screen, if you want more infos, it's Darkstar as well. So I think they have like pages everywhere, like Insta and Twitter. They would be better than me on that. And they will communicate about King on Screen because they are the distributor, and so they, for the US, at least the US and Canada, so they will be able to share more info about King on Screen, and keep posted. I don't know where the book will be announced. I don't know how it will work, everything, you know. But I'm thinking about being more, like, you know, present.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Well, I'll put all the links in the show notes of this episode as well and everything. And Sebastien, I just want to say thank you once again for your time and just for chatting with me about this. I'm a big fan of it, and just congratulations to you and Daphne and all of the team who put this together. It's just such a beautiful love letter to Stephen King and an insightful view at the adapting process and everything. So it's such a gift, and I'm so gracious that, or I'm so pleased that you were so gracious with your time tonight. So you'll find links to all that in the show notes of the episode as well. Sebastien, once again, just thank you so much, and I can't wait to see what you guys do next. It's
lovely meeting you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, and that is the episode. I just want to say once again, thank you so much to Sebastien for taking the time to chat with me about the film and about Stephen King and all of the topics we covered. It was such a blast, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he and the director Daphne, what that whole team does next. It was such a treat to get to chat with him about it. Once again, you can find links to all of the information, everything we discussed and everything in the show notes of the episode. So check your podcast apps or just check the website, towerjunkiespod.com. Next time on the podcast, I'm not sure exactly what we're going to be doing. We do need to finish up the Gunslinger. Obviously, we'll be doing that soon. One of the reasons why Tiny was not available tonight is he's actually seeing Close Encounters of the Third Kind in the movie theater at the State Museum here in Indy with his dad. So hopefully he's enjoying that experience. I know it's one of his favorites. Anyway, we're gonna get back to our Gunslinger stuff, and I need to get in touch with Kim C and have her on for Mr. Harrigan's phone. But in the meantime, check out Patreon and go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Tons more stuff there as well. So I'm going to start playing myself out. Once again, thank you so much to Sebastien Cruz for chatting with me tonight about King on Screen. And it was such a pleasure. And I can't wait for people to see the documentary because it is a real treat. It is such a blast. So check that out. And check out the other shows, obviously. Thank you guys so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights, and may you have twice the number. And now, enjoy this short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. For the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, such as early access to episodes, TV, book, and movie reviews and reaction recordings, commentary tracks, and Patreon potpourri episodes, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy. And then as we just follow Marty throughout his day, we learn that there has been tons and tons of natural disasters, wars, famine, plagues, any number of just disastrous end-of-world scenarios have played out, including the complete destruction of half of the state of California. And this just plays out in this very calm sort of demeanor as we're learning about this stuff from people who have lived this for who knows how long, however long Chuck has been, ill. And as we're kind of brought into it, it's presented to us in this just malaise throughout everyone that he interacts with. There is just this common refrain that's like, yeah, well, this sucks. And it's something that is very deliberate because...
This podcast was edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find links to all of our shows at ObsessiveViewer.com/podcasts. For exclusive bonus content, including reviews, commentaries, and B-roll episodes, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.